Hey guys, welcome to the Fish Room. I'm Rachel O'Leary and it's time for a Tuesday tip. I thought I would continue our discussion this week on quarantine by sort of giving you a peek inside a lot of my quarantine tanks, or at least a few of them. Now, some of the things that we discussed are acclimation, cross-contamination, and briefly water changes. I really feel like water changes are a fish keeper's best friend when you have things in quarantine. You're diluting any pathogens, you're keeping things as pristine as possible, you're removing any uneaten food and any dead fish, should there be any. I do daily water changes on all my tanks, and each tank gets its own set of equipment, a net and a siphon, not to be shared with anything else. And I showed you how I labeled those in the past. Now, some of the things I'm looking for in brand new fish are body condition. Have they come in fat? Have they come in thin? Why are they thin? Are they eating? How are they eating? What are they eating? You know, I find that the vast majority of fish eat right off the bat, and if they're not, it's sign for concern. I also want to look and see, are their fins damaged? Are they in good shape? Are the edges damaged from ammonia burn? You know, do they have any scale or slime coat damage from handling, shipping, etc.? And if they do, I need to do some palliative treatment, maybe even more water changes to compensate for that damage. Otherwise, you know, as a stressed fish, brand new to a tank, they are more prone to secondary infections. The other thing I really look at a lot, and where my radar comes in the most handy, is a fish's behavior. You know, and a lot of this is knowing what you're getting. For instance, I'll show you in a minute, but diptails should all be up at the surface. They should be at a 45-degree angle, and they should be relatively sedentary for the most part. If they're not, where are they hanging out, and what does that tell me? Dario should be all over the tank, actively exploring, flaring, displaying to each other, and doing what Darios do, even in quarantine and even when overcrowded. How colored up a fish is can be a good indicator of their health as well. Generally, they'll lose some color if they're not feeling well. You know, I've caught a lot of flack over the years for not having my entire system automated, and the reason I don't is by manually doing all the work in my fish room, I'm really forced to look very closely at all the new fish every day. This is especially important with little tiny fish because you can't always readily see the start of illness. You know, ick can be very subtle on a fish that's a half an inch. And when little fish get sick, it's often fatal. It can be very difficult to treat them, so you need to act quickly. So let's take a peek in a few of my quarantine tanks and discuss what I'm looking for. Yesterday I got in quite a few fish, and I've set up 16 quarantine tanks to hold them. For the vast majority, they're pretty bare at the moment. These are Dario, which I'll show you closer in a minute. And because I got in so many of them, I put in a bunch of plant matter just because they can be a bit territorial, and I don't want them damaging each other in order for me to observe. So it makes the observation process a little more difficult, but it's important for this species. This is a more typical quarantine setup. This is for diptail pencilfish, Nanostomus equus. This is for a group of Sowelia. You can see I have the bubble output turned way up, and that's where they're hanging out. Clown Killy quarantine. They have a little bit of decor. Daniochoprae and Gariflavatra. A more typical setup. Ruby Tetras, SB Rasboras, Ember Tetras. So let's take a closer look and sort of talk about what I look for in different kinds of fish. Now this tank has about 400 Ember Tetras, and this is a fish that's more prone to ick, so they go in a bare tank. And what I really look for in them is just if they're colored up, eating well, and since they're a schooling fish, if they're all sticking together. Again, good body condition, good fin health. These guys have nice round bellies. They're pretty young. They're super tiny. But the fact that they've colored up this much in less than 24 hours in quarantine makes me think that this is going to be a very healthy shipment. They're already eating really well and nobody's isolating themselves. They look really great. These are Cobitus sinensis, a spiny loach similar to a coolie type. And with these particular fish, they're really prone to getting ammonia damage, which shows up as reddening of the gills and red spots on their bellies, and a lot of times they'll really take a lot of TLC. Now this group is fat and extremely active, so my concern is very low at this point. And in fact, these, just like most of the other species I got in, came in with 0 DOA. So right now, even though they look perfect, they get 2 weeks of quarantine here at the house until I make sure they're eating really well and nothing crops up. Loaches are difficult to treat, so I'm extra cautious with them. It's unusual for me to do it, but in this bigger tank, I put in 2 species. Put in these Daniochoprae, which almost always come in perfect, and they did this time as well. And then I put in Gara flavatra, which also came in really, really well. Choprae, I'm looking for things like ick. With the Gara, really just body condition and seeing if they need to be dewormed since they're a wild fish. So this is the Dario quarantine tank. What I look for specifically in Dario or similar species is nice round bellies and good color. The round bellies signify if they're eating well and processing their nutrition. They're prone to getting pretty thin and can be challenging to feed, so it's especially important that I make sure they are doing well. Now this quarantine is unique in that it gets a lot more decor because these fish, despite their small stature, can be kind of jerks to each other. It makes my job of visual inspection a little bit harder, but all in all, it's much better for the fish, and they seem to do better when I do things this way. You can see how great these look. A lot of them are really colored up and really nice and fat. I'm super pleased. These guys are also prone to ammonia burn on their fins, so they get macro photography and a really close inspection to make sure everybody's doing well. Now in this tank there are some Rhinogobius, so this quarantine has very strong bubble output and a little power head. And it also has some decor because they can be not very kind to each other, so I need to be able to allow them to establish some territories as well, just to prevent damage. They'll take chunks out of each other and chase each other a lot, and that uses up energy that they need to recover from the shipping process. They're looking really awesome with Rhinogobius as well, or other sort of predatory fish. Again, the biggest thing I'm looking for is round bellies, good body condition, and normal behavior. Now in this tank we have 600 chili rasboras. Generally they either come in good or bad. They are pretty prone to ick, and it is so hard to tell with these teeny tiny fish if they have any disease at all because they're so small. It makes visual inspection really difficult. So what I do with these guys is daily macro photography, and that allows me to inspect a sampling of their fins and body condition right off the bat. Now this group came in just about perfect, so I'll watch them closely and take photographs for this first week and then add some more plants for them to color up and offer them for sale. These are ruby tetras, and they notoriously come in poorly colored like this. It really takes them quite a bit longer to show their natural beauty. For the first week, all I'm doing is making sure that they're stable and that they're eating. After they get past that first week, I'll give them a bunch more plants, and then they'll really fire up that ruby red color they get. They're one of my favorite fish, so look for them in a species spotlight once I get them colored up. Thanks for watching. Make sure you stop by my Facebook as well as my website, MsJinx.com, where you can find my upcoming speaking engagements, my current stock list, and information on all things nano. I do have 2 speaking engagements this month in Pennsylvania, so if you're interested, go to my website events page. If you have any specific questions that you would like for me to answer, let me know in the comments below.